Welcome back to SERA Self Discipline. I am glad you are here. And today I want to start with something that might feel uncomfortable. Something that most people in the modern world actively avoid. Something that, if you have never truly experienced it, you might not even realize you are running from it. Silence. Not the silence between songs. Not the 3 minutes before your phone buzzes again. I mean deep, sustained, undistracted silence. The kind where there is no input. No podcast in your ear. No background noise. No scroll to return to. Just you, your thoughts, and the raw experience of your own mind. Most people find that terrifying. And that terror tells you something. It tells you that your relationship with yourself, with your own inner world, is broken. Or at the very least, it has never been developed. Because a man who cannot sit alone with himself, without entertainment, without stimulation, without distraction, that man does not know himself. And a man who does not know himself cannot discipline himself. You cannot govern what you do not understand. Today we are going into the world of deliberate solitude. We are going to look at some of the most remarkable figures in history and across cultures who chose, not by force but by design, to step away from the noise of the world in order to forge something extraordinary inside themselves. We are going to look at monks, philosophers, warriors, and leaders who understood that the inner life is not something that develops on its own. It must be deliberately cultivated. In silence. In stillness. In solitude. And by the end of this episode, you are going to understand why the most disciplined people in the world are not the busiest people. They are the people who have mastered the art of being alone with themselves. Let us get into it. The first tradition I want to bring to you comes from the monasteries of the Christian desert. Not as a religious discussion, as a study in extreme self-discipline. In the 3rd and 4th centuries, a movement arose in Egypt, Syria, and Palestine. Men and women began leaving the cities, leaving the comfort, the social life, the business, the pleasure, and going into the desert to live in radical simplicity and solitude. They became known as the Desert Fathers and Mothers. And their insights into the human mind, into self-discipline, into the nature of distraction and desire, are astonishing in their depth and their accuracy. One of the most famous desert fathers was a man named Abba Moses. He was a former bandit, a large, violent man who had lived a life of crime, who went into the desert and became one of the wisest and most disciplined men of his age. People would travel for days to ask him a single question about how to live well. And the most consistent thing he taught was this: stay in your cell. Sit in silence. Do not run from yourself. Your cell will teach you everything. Now your cell is not a physical prison. It is the practice of staying present with yourself instead of escaping into distraction. And what Abba Moses observed, what every desert father and mother observed, was that when a person stops running and truly sits with themselves in silence, a very specific thing happens. Every desire, every fear, every craving, every anxiety that has been chasing them surfaces. All of it comes up. The things they were avoiding by staying busy. The feelings they were suppressing with stimulation. And here is the key insight. The Desert Fathers said that this surfacing of inner turbulence is not a sign that something is wrong. It is the beginning of the work. You cannot address what you have never faced. You cannot discipline what you have never examined. The silence forces the examination. And the man who can sit in that discomfort without fleeing, who can observe his cravings and fears and thoughts without being governed by them, that man is beginning to forge something real. The ancient Greek word for this practice was Hesychia, inner stillness. Not emptiness. Not passivity. A living, active stillness that is fully awake to what is arising inside. It is the training ground of the soul. And the Desert Fathers understood that this training cannot happen in a noisy, distracted, constantly stimulated life. It requires deliberate periods of genuine silence. What does this mean for you today? It means this. If you cannot sit alone without your phone for 30 minutes, truly alone, truly silent, your inner life is ungoverned. That is the starting point. Not an accusation. A diagnosis. And a diagnosis is useful because it points you toward the work. Let us now go east. To the Buddhist monastic tradition and to one of the most powerful practices of deliberate solitude in the world, the Vipassana meditation retreat. Vipassana means to see things as they really are. and a traditional Vipassana retreat involves 10 days of complete silence. No speaking, no reading, no writing, no phone, no eye contact. Just you, your breath, your body, and your own mind. For 10 days. Now I know what some of you are thinking. 10 days of silence. That sounds like torture. And honestly, for many people who attend for the first time, it feels like it. The first few days, the mind does what a caged animal does when it realizes the cage is real. It fights. It becomes restless, irritable, desperate for escape. The craving for stimulation becomes almost physical. But here is what the practitioners who have gone through this describe happening after that initial storm. The mind begins to settle. The noise decreases. And what emerges from beneath the noise is something most people have never encountered: their actual self. Their actual values. Their actual desires, separate from what society told them to want. Their actual fears, separate from the ones they perform for others. Goenka, the teacher who popularized Vipassana in the modern world, taught that the source of all human suffering and all failure of self-discipline is the same thing: the compulsive habit of the mind to react. To crave what is pleasant and push away what is unpleasant. To be perpetually pulled toward comfort and away from difficulty. He called it the reactive pattern. And he said that you cannot break this pattern by thinking about it. You can only break it by observing it, in real time, without acting on it, until the compulsion loses its power. That is what 10 days of silence does. It gives you the space to watch your own reactive patterns without having the usual escape routes available. You cannot scroll. You cannot talk. You cannot eat your feelings or exercise your anxiety away. You just sit and watch. And gradually the patterns that have been running your behavior from underground, the unconscious triggers, the automatic reactions, the habitual escapes, they become visible. And what is visible can be addressed. Now you do not need to go on a 10-day silent retreat to benefit from this understanding. But you do need to build something like it into your life. Even 20 minutes of genuine silence a day, not as background ambience while you do something else, but actual seated stillness where you observe your own mind without acting on it. Even that, practiced consistently, begins to develop the same capacity. The capacity to see the impulse before you act on it. To create the space between stimulus and response where your actual discipline lives. Now I want to bring in a figure who synthesizes the monastic and the practical in a way that is directly applicable to your daily life. His name is Henry David Thoreau. You may know his name. He was an American philosopher and writer who in 1845 did something radical. He built a small cabin on the shore of Walden Pond in Massachusetts, and he went there alone to live deliberately for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. Not as a hermit, not as a monk, as an experiment. His stated purpose was this: I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. Live deliberately. That phrase is the heart of everything. Deliberate living is the opposite of reactive living. It is the choice, made consciously and consistently, to direct your life according to your own values and intentions rather than being carried along by habit, social pressure, comfort, and distraction. At Walden, Thoreau stripped his life down to essentials. He grew his own food. He built his own shelter. He had almost no possessions. And in that radical simplicity, he discovered something that his contemporaries in busy, ambitious, commercial America were entirely missing: the extraordinary depth of an examined, intentional life. He wrote, "It is not enough to be busy. So are the ants. The question is, what are we busy about? Let that land. It is not enough to be busy. Busyness is not discipline. Busyness is often the most sophisticated form of avoidance. The man who fills every hour with tasks and noise and social obligation might appear disciplined from the outside, but if he cannot stop, if he needs the busyness the way an addict needs a substance, then the busyness is not a sign of his discipline. It is a sign of his discomfort with himself." Thoreau also made an observation about money and time that is deeply relevant to modern life. He calculated that if he worked as most of his contemporaries worked, long hours to earn money to buy a nice house and fill it with possessions, he would spend the majority of his waking life in service of things that did not actually make him happy. But if he simplified his needs radically, he could work a few weeks a year and spend the rest of his time living as he actually wanted to. He chose simplicity. Not poverty, simplicity. And in that simplicity, he found more richness than most wealthy men he observed ever found in their abundance. The lesson here is not that you should quit your job and go live in a cabin. The lesson is that the life you are currently building, the complexity, the obligations, the possessions, the lifestyle, may be costing you the very thing you actually want, which is the time and space to live according to your own values. Thoreau asks the question that your busyness prevents you from asking. Is the life you are building the life you actually want to live? Let us now go to Japan again, but to a different tradition from the samurai we explored in episode 3. Let us look at the Zen Buddhist monks and their practice of Samu, which means work practice. Because here is something remarkable about the most disciplined monastic traditions. They did not separate work from meditation. They understood that discipline is not a state you achieve in silence and then bring to your work. Discipline is forged in the work itself. In Zen monasteries, every daily task was treated as a meditation practice. Sweeping the floor, preparing food, washing dishes, chopping wood, carrying water. Every ordinary, humble, repetitive task was done with complete, undivided attention. Not as a means to an end, as an end in itself. The sweeping was not something to get through so you could get to the meditation hall. The sweeping was the meditation. The Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki wrote, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, in the expert's mind there are few." What he meant was that the disciplined mind approaches every moment, even familiar, repeated, ordinary moments, with freshness and full presence. It does not run on autopilot. It does not coast through the mundane parts of life waiting for something important or interesting to arrive. It is fully present in the ordinary because it understands that the ordinary is where most of life actually lives. Think about how differently you experience tasks depending on your mental state. When you are distracted, half present, half thinking about something else, time drags, the task feels tedious, your work is mechanical. But when you are fully present, completely absorbed in what is in front of you, even a simple task has a different quality. Time moves differently. The quality of your work improves. Your satisfaction increases. The Zen tradition understood this completely, and they built entire monastic systems around the practice of bringing full attention to ordinary tasks. Because a man who can bring full attention to sweeping a floor can bring full attention to anything. And full attention is discipline in its most fundamental form. What does your relationship with ordinary tasks look like? Do you rush through them resentfully, waiting to get to the things that feel important? Or can you be fully present in them? Can you cook a meal with your complete attention? Can you clean your space as if it matters? Can you do the routine parts of your work without your mind drifting to your phone or your next task? That quality of attention, or the lack of it, is telling you everything about the actual state of your self-discipline. I want to bring in one more figure before we close. And this one might surprise you, because he was not a monk. He was not a philosopher. He was a general. His name was Ulysses S. Grant, the American Civil War general who eventually became President of the United States. And he is relevant to this episode because of what he discovered about solitude in the middle of one of the most chaotic, violent, and pressure-filled situations imaginable, command in battle. Grant was described by those who served with him as almost unnaturally calm in crisis. When other generals received alarming reports and panicked, when the noise and confusion of battle created chaos in the command structure, Grant would go quiet. He would find a spot, sometimes literally sitting under a tree while shells landed nearby, and he would be still, thinking, not reacting, not being swept up in the emotional storm around him. Thinking clearly, quietly, with full attention to the actual situation rather than the emotional temperature of the moment. He said that the most important thing a leader could do in a crisis was to refuse to be infected by the fear of those around him. That sounds like courage, but it is actually something deeper. It is the capacity for inner stillness under pressure. And that capacity does not appear in a crisis if it has not been cultivated in ordinary life. Grant's ability to be still inside a storm was not a personality trait he was born with. It was something he had developed through years of deliberate practice of exactly the quality we are talking about today, the ability to return to inner stillness regardless of external chaos. That is the destination of all the practices we have discussed in this episode. The monks' Hesychia, the meditators' Vipassana, Thoreau's deliberate living. The Zen practitioner's Samu. They all lead to the same capacity, the ability to be internally still and clear when everything outside is moving fast and loud and demanding a reaction. And that capacity is exactly what the modern world is systematically destroying in most people. Because the modern world is engineered to prevent stillness. Every notification, every feed, every autoplay, every buzz and ping and update is designed to pull you out of stillness and into reaction. The economy of attention has one goal: to make sure you are never truly still, because stillness is not profitable. Reaction is profitable. Outrage is profitable. Craving is profitable. Your stillness is an act of resistance. Not passive resistance. Active, cultivated, disciplined resistance. Every time you sit in silence when you could be scrolling, every time you let a moment be empty instead of filling it with noise, every time you choose to be present with your own thoughts rather than escaping into someone else's content, you are building the capacity that Grant had under fire. The capacity to be still inside the storm. So how do you build this? Practically, concretely, starting from where you actually are. Start small and start honest. If you cannot currently sit in silence for 10 minutes without reaching for your phone, that is your baseline. Not a judgment. A starting point. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Sit. No phone. No music. No podcast. Just you. If thoughts come, and they will come furiously at first, just observe them. You are not trying to stop thinking. You are practicing observing your thinking without immediately acting on it. Do this every single day. After 2 weeks, extend to 20 minutes. After a month, to 30. This is your daily solitude practice. This is your desert cell. This is your Walden Pond, your Vipassana cushion, your Zen sweeping, all in 30 minutes of honest, daily silence. Alongside this, bring the Samu practice into your daily tasks. Choose one ordinary thing you do every day, making coffee, walking to work, washing dishes, and practice giving it your complete attention. Not as a performance. Actually be there. Fully. Notice what happens to your relationship with time, with quality, with your own experience of your day when you bring that quality of attention even to one small thing. And finally, practice the pause. Before you react to anything that provokes you, an email, a conversation, a news headline, a difficult person, pause. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. In that pause, ask yourself, what is actually happening here and what is the wisest response? Not the fastest response. Not the emotional response. The wisest one. That pause is the hinge. Everything turns on it. These 3 practices, daily silence, attentive presence in ordinary tasks, and the pause before reaction, are the entire architecture of what the monks and philosophers and warriors in this episode spent lifetimes building. They are available to you right now, today, without leaving your life, without going to a monastery or a cabin in the woods. But they require one thing that most people are unwilling to give. They require you to stop running from yourself, to turn toward the silence instead of away from it, to be willing to sit with what comes up, without immediately medicating it with stimulation or distraction. The man who can do that, who can face his own mind in stillness and not flinch, that man can face anything. Because he has already won the hardest battle there is. The one inside himself. The monk knows something the millionaire is still searching for. The warrior who can be still under fire knows something the reactive, distracted, always connected man will never find in his scrolling. The desert father sitting in his cell knows something the man who cannot be alone for 10 minutes has not yet discovered. They all know the same thing, that the most powerful place in your entire life is the silence inside you. And that silence has to be found, protected, practiced, and returned to, every single day, if it is going to be of any use to you. Go find yours. This is SERA Self Discipline. Episode 5. Deep Mind. Real Grit. See you in the next one.